Are you holding back on travel plans because you're afraid of the language gap? Well, no need to mind the gap if you have Babbel. Speak like a whole new you with Babbel, the language learning app that gets you talking. With quick 10-minute lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel gets you talking a new language in 3 weeks. Because talking is the key to really knowing a language. Babbel is designed for real conversation. And I can say that that's true because I used Babbel before my recent trip. I went on to Germany, which is a language that I'd never studied before, but I really wanted to be just comfortable with things like navigating my way around a train station or a bus station, to be able to order food in a cafe, or to say I'm sorry if I bump into somebody on the street, and Babbel was perfect for that. So I was able to travel over there with confidence, knowing just a bit more German than I did before. Here's a special holiday deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/vulgar. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/vulgar, spelled BABBEL.com/vulgar. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Bingo Blitz rules!
If your bingo has ads in it,
That's not a bingo.
if it doesn't have the coolest tournaments, mini-games, and the most breathtaking design,
Nope, not a bingo.
if your bingo moment makes you feel so excited that you just want to burst in joy and scream out loud, bingo! Sorry, so you're playing...
Bingo Blitz? Now that's a bingo. Go for a world of excitement with Bingo Blitz, the #1 free bingo game. Download Bingo Blitz and play for free.
Now that's a bingo.
Hello and welcome to Vulgar History, a feminist women's history comedy podcast. My name is Anne Foster, and this is Season 7, Part 2. How do you solve a problem like Marie Antoinette, where we are slowly learning about the world that Marie Antoinette lived in, and to eventually, when we get to her story, we'll have so much context for it. And it's really exciting for me because this part especially, the stories are intertwining. Like, people I've talked about before are showing up again, and it's like, oh, it's kind of starting to feel like that Mary Quave Scott season a bit, where you're like, oh, that person, oh, that person. It's like there's characters who recur. And one of those recurring characters is the Marquis of Lafayette, a person who I never knew existed until Hamilton, the musical. And I'm like, why is there a French character in this? I don't know. I didn't really look into why there was a French character in it because I didn't care. But anyway, it turns out Lafayette is a big fave of one of your faves, a guest we have not had on the show since for almost a year. Allison Epstein, welcome.
Thank you for having me back. It has been a long time, and I'm here to get excited about my boy.
And I do want to mention, like, you know, feminist women's history comedy podcast. And sometimes we talk about other genders. And today last time we were talking about Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier St. George. Today we're talking about Lafayette because, you know, it's kind of like when you see, like, I think of traditional history as like men's history. You know, when you see those lists that are like the 100 most important people in the world, and it's like men plus like
Elizabeth I. Yeah.
and Joan of Arc. And I'm like, well, that's kind of men's history. So that proportion, I think, it's kind of like this podcast is almost always about women, but sometimes it's not.
And I will say that, like, we probably wouldn't have done a Lafayette episode had he not appeared in 19 of the past 25 episodes that you've done. Like, he is insisting upon being on this podcast.
He's here. Well, and then he's your guy. Can you explain about the fan fiction of it all? Did you not write Lafayette fan fiction as a young person?
Okay, I need to put that sentence in context because it sounds insane, but yes. I had a very good history teacher in the 5th grade, which is when we started learning like colonial American history. I had terrible teachers before and after that, but 5th grade was like a really good history year. And that was when we did the American Revolution. And one of the assignments in that class was keep a journal through all of the historical events that you're learning about as if you're one of the people in the events you're reading about. Like, pretend you're a colonist who's experiencing the American Revolution. And I, being who I am, said, why would I be a colonist when I could be the Marquis de Lafayette? And so I wrote the entire American Revolution from the point of view of the Marquis de Lafayette as a 5th grader. For some reason, people are surprised I turned out the way I did, but he was my favorite. He's the best. And I don't normally encourage standing historical figures because they're all problematic, but he's surprisingly unproblematic the longer you go. So,
and that sort of like, I came to learn about who he was because I did Well, especially he shows up in like the Sally Hemings episode. Like he's there in France with Thomas Jefferson. He was, I mean, I have a couple notes. Like you have your long notes, but I went through Control F. Like I've talked about him before. He was in the Peggy Shippen episode, just kind of like causing havoc. Like he's just been there to the point where it's like, well, we need to learn who this person is. Why was he involved in the French Revolution and also the American Revolution? And for reasons you're going to talk about. So you've written about him in your Substack. He is, would you consider him a dirtbag?
He is the least dirtbag that I've ever profiled on my Substack, Dirtbags Through the Ages. I think of him as a dirtbag with a heart of gold, which is that he means so aggressively well that sometimes he's going to do the dumbest thing possible, but always for noble reasons. He's just like crusading forward with 2 brain cells and an idea about justice. And I love that for him.
So you have various notes, and this is like, you're going to be leading this discussion, and I will jump in with questions. And I have, I think, 2 points, 2 things that I'm going to say, just to remind everybody of where we've seen him doing stuff before. But can you explain? Wait, his name is...
Oh.
What's his name?
His name is too much. His name is Marie-Joseph Paul-Yves Roche Gilbert de Moitié Marquis de Lafayette. Because he's rich.
We're going to call him Lafayette.
Yes, we are. I'm never saying that name again.
Mm-hmm. Although I do like that his name is Gilbert.
Yes.
Like in Anne of Green Gables. So who is this guy?
Yes. I told Anne before this that I put together entirely too many notes. So I am prepared for anything that may come up in this conversation, because when I love somebody, I go too hard. So warning to the listener. But our boy Lafayette was born in 1757 in the city of Chavagnac-Lafayette in France, which is how you know he's fancy, because he was born in the city with his name in it.
That's like Peggy Shippen from Shippensburg. Yeah.
Exactly. Like his parents were fancy, they were rich, they were Marquis and Marchioness. I've never known really what the gender alternative to that is. But
I don't know how you say it.
No, but it will be unsurprising to your listeners to know that both his mother and his father each have approximately 9 first names as well. Mm-hmm. So this is a family tradition. But his father was fairly well known at the time for being this noble military hero who would also sort of just rush off into danger in the name of justice. This is a family trait. This went back to Joan of Arc. His great whatever grandfather fought alongside Joan of Arc. So they've always been like this, is what I'm saying. But when Lafayette was 2 years old, so 1759, his father died at the Battle of Minden during the 7 Years' War in Westphalia, which I know you're familiar with due to your research into Carolina of Brunswick, which we were talking about just before this.
Westphalia is Germany-ish.
Everything is Germany-ish for so long. Germany does not make sense to me or to anyone else. It makes sense to Lana Wood Johnson and no one else. So at this point, Lafayette is 2 years old, and now also the Marquis de Lafayette, which in most vulgar history stories that we've talked about is a recipe for bad news. No one wants a baby to be in charge of anything. But it's actually going to be okay. So that's sort of nice. He lives with his mom and his grandmother, I think, until Lafayette grows up to be about 11. And then he moves to Paris and signs up as a musketeer in the service of the French King Louis XV.
I'm so sorry. He's 11.
He is 11 years old. Yes.
Is that the age of musketeers usually?
It is indeed not. No.
Okay. Was he very tall?
No.
Okay.
Was he very good at this age? No. But did he have the spirit? Yes, he did. Which we know because he achieved the rank of second lieutenant when he was 13 and a half years old. So
was everyone just like, oh, he's so cute. Like let's just let him do it. Okay.
This was not a combat role. He was supposed to hold a musket and walk in parades and go to parties. But like, this just illustrates who he was as a little baby. He's just like, I would like to be a soldier and be a good person and save people. And he's just the cutest little fiend.
And it also, presume speaks to the fact that he was charming and people let him do this.
Yes.
Because I don't think every 11-year-old who showed up would be allowed to do this, let alone get a promotion.
No, it also helps that he's incredibly rich and very powerful.
Yes.
So
Yes. Okay.
Every single piece of privilege a person can have, the Marquis de Lafayette has. So his sexism bonus is 0. His classism bonus is 0. So he's thriving, but he's using it to get involved in the Musketeers. His mother dies when he is 13. So now he is an orphan baby musketeer. And I think he still lives with his grandma for a while, but he like goes to schools in the 1700s where just like you move in. And so he was basically fine at that point. But when he turns 14, it becomes time for him to find a wife because he's rich and famous and fancy and has lots of money. Not that you talk about this in lots of your episodes, but children are getting engaged to be married at this time all the time. It's no big deal. It's a political situation.
Yeah, and they don't actually move in with their spouse and like are expected to have children until they're like much older.
This is just like there's a very rich 14-year-old walking around. We should figure out what's going to happen to him.
It's like financial planning.
Exactly.
Really.
And I've talked to you about this part of the story before because I love it. This is the most adorable little love story in history.
But I didn't know he was 14.
He was 14
when it happened.
It's
okay.
Really cute. So when Lafayette is 14, there's this other nobleman in Paris called the Duc d'Aillon, who has a daughter, Marie Adrienne. And he says, you know who would be a great husband for my daughter? This incredibly rich baby soldier. That would be a perfect match. So he's trying to like go behind the scenes and machinate so that they can get together. But Marie Adrienne's mom says, I want my daughter to marry someone she actually likes. I don't want to force her into a marriage. And I also don't want to force this adorable baby soldier into a marriage either. So what she does is she casually arranges these meet cutes all over Paris. So they show up together at the same parties and they like go for walks in the park together and they'll like show up at a concert. And over like 2 to 3 years, they actually become best friends and then fall in love. And then they agree to get married in 1774 when he's 17 and Marie Adrienne is 15. And they love each other devotedly. They are passionately in love with each other for the rest of their lives. They are besties. It is the cutest fucking thing in the whole world. I love this.
Is unprecedented on this podcast.
Yeah, I know.
In terms of wholesomeness.
It's so wholesome, and she's such a good person, and he's such a wife guy through this entire story. I will point it out as we go, but like every 5 or 10 years, he's in the most tumultuous historical period ever, and he just keeps going, I'm sorry, I have to go home and say hi to my wife. I will be back later. It's just, they're so good for each other, and it makes me happy. Unfortunately, Marie Adrienne's dad is a dick who doesn't love fun or revolution. So he'll thwart things as we go, but love conquers all in this story. So it's nice. So when they're newly married, Lafayette moves into Marie Adrienne's father's house because he doesn't have a house or a father or anything. He just has the Palace of Versailles and being a musketeer. Eventually, at this point, he's a legal adult, so he does get an actual army commission instead of just walking in parades. And then he and Marie Adrienne have their first child 2 years later. She passes away shortly after that due to infant mortality reasons, but they waited until it was a reasonable time to start doing that. And then it's 1774, and we get a brand new king in France. King Louis XV passes away.
Number 15.
Yes.
Wait. So I went in the Madame du Barry. I learned the difference between 14, 15, and 16.
Yes.
So which one is this?
15 just died. We're heading into 16.
16, Marie Antoinette's husband.
Marie Antoinette's husband, yes.
Okay, got it, yeah.
So for context, Lafayette is 17 and Marie Antoinette is 18. So they are virtually the same age. So Louis XVI becomes king. And sort of in that time period, the American Revolution is just starting to bubble. It's 1775, 1776. And I'm not going to go into the whole American Revolution of it all because you've already done that for your listeners. But
you know what? That's another thing that I'm just like, I can't believe I have to learn this.
I know.
But
I was like, Anne's learning about George Washington. I know she hates it.
Yeah.
So, but in France, the American Revolution was sort of a point of interest, but not like a huge deal.
Were they like excited because they were enemies with England and the French Revolution was enemies with England? So they're just like, yeah, fuck you, England. We love this.
Exactly. It was, oh, something bad's happening to England. That's delightful. I hope that continues. But Lafayette, of course, being the kind of kid he was like, yes, it's bad for England and that's fun. But also there are these oppressed people fighting for liberation from an oppressive force. And I think I would like to go help them because of who I am as a person. So he got super jazzed and wanted to like run off and join the American Revolution. France did not want that to happen because even though France was enthusiastic about the American Revolution, if it started sending soldiers and officers and warships, that's a declaration of war against England. And you sort of have to be ready if that's going to happen. And Louis XVI had been king for 2 years and wasn't super ready to start declaring war on other countries yet. So the king sent a bunch of French nobles on a diplomatic mission to London in 1777, basically to say, hi, we're aware that you're having a problem over there in America, and we are not going to get involved. We're going to remain neutral. Don't worry about it. They sent Lafayette on this mission, which was a mistake.
Was he at this point, what, like 18 years old? Like he's still very young.
He's very, very young and very in love with his own ideas. And so instead of going to like the palace to talk to the king and say, hey, everything's fine, he ran off and wrote a letter to his father-in-law, the Duke, to say, sorry, I'm actually going to run away to America to fight in the French Revolution. I hope that's not a problem. And then he started raising money to buy his own warship so that he could sail over there by himself and join the revolution.
Wait, and he's raising money. He's in England while he's doing this?
Yes.
Okay.
He doesn't need to raise a ton of money because he's rich as hell, but just
he has a lot of money.
He's got a lot of money to start with. Yeah, this is not a challenge. His father-in-law is pissed because this is ruining his life and his family's life. And also, I hate him. So the father-in-law writes to the king and says, I would like you to issue a proclamation that all French officers are forbidden expressly from serving in the American Revolution. And the king did. And the proclamation says something like, all French officers, especially the Marquis de Lafayette, are forbidden from serving in the American Revolution. And Lafayette said, that's nice. I'm 95% of the way to a warship anyway, so I'm just going to keep doing it and hope nobody stops me.
Yeah.
He buys his warship called the Victoire, and it cost him 112,000 pounds, which I did the conversion on because I'm always curious, and that's $12.6 million. So this boy is committed. He starts outfitting the ship for war. He fills it with cannons and gunpowder, and then he sends a quick note to his wife, Marie Adrienne, and says, I'm going to war. How's your dad taking it? The answer is not well. The dad sends a family friend after Lafayette to say, if you send this ship toward America, you're going to be in enormous trouble. And also, we got you an officer's commission with a battalion in Marseille. So you have to go there. And if you don't, it's treason. So please go off to Marseille and mind your business. But this is my favorite Lafayette anecdote of the whole story, actually. This is where he qualifies in my brain as a dirtbag, because he looks at the family friend and says, great, I will go to Marseille. I will mind my business. Don't worry about it. And he rides with the family friend about 2 miles toward Marseille. And then as soon as the family friend gets out of eyeshot, he turns around, sneaks back through the forest, goes back to the port and says, hey, ship, take off for America. He's not on the ship because he knows as soon as that ship gets to the port leaving toward the last port toward America at the end of Spain, it's going to get searched because the dad is going to be looking for him. So he sneaks cross country to Basque. And then after the ship gets searched for the last time, he hops on at the very last possible minute under cover of darkness and sails away to America running away to his revolution. And you imagine him flipping both middle fingers at his father-in-law from the deck as he sails. And he's such a little dick, and I love him.
But he's got a plan and he's good at it. You know, there's been so many stories in this podcast about people trying to do sneaky shit like that, but they always mess up. But he had it all figured out.
Yeah, it was flawlessly executed. He was 18 years old, and he had a scheme and a plan and a warship.
He had been a soldier since age 11, and he put that experience to use. Yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing. So he's on the warship, and the warship's coming to America.
Yes, the warship lands in America in 1777. So the revolution is well underway at this point. Like, Declaration of Independence was the year before. George Washington is in charge of the Continental Army. And at this point, it's sort of not going so great. The American Revolution was basically a bunch of farmers with their hunting rifles pretending to be an army. They'd never been trained before. No one really knew how to do anything. And George Washington was absolutely fed up with the quality of soldiers that he had. He had been in the 7 Years' War. He knew how to command things, but nobody knew what they were doing. So when Lafayette showed up and said, "Hello, I am an 18-year-old soldier who's been in the army for 8 years. And also I have a warship and $12.6 million. Would you like any help with your army?" He was on board immediately. George Washington and the Marquis de Lafayette sort of met at a party one night. And from there, it was bro love sort of for the rest of their days together. Lafayette was an 18-year-old orphan who just wanted to be loved. And Washington was a childless general who sucked in a lot of ways, as you've discussed. But they have this really lovely father-son sort of relationship through their whole lives that is problematic given how messed up George Washington is, but is also very sweet because Lafayette just wanted a dad to look up to. So I sort of love that for them. And so Lafayette is now fully in the army. He's not given a division of soldiers to oversee because he's a foreign citizen who just kind of showed up. So that would be problematic. But he does start fighting pretty much right away. And he is immediately the most useful person in most of these early American Revolution battles.
Because he has actual skills at fighting. Yeah.
He knows strategy and tactics. And also he is obsessed with running headfirst into danger to do the most dramatic thing you can. He's got no self-preservation instinct and military training. He's the perfect person to have.
I could see this story, this could be not a good story if he was just a person who ran, a rich kid who ran off to the army at age 11 and thought he was good, but he wasn't. But he actually was good.
Yeah, he was good. And he also didn't need to be in command of everything. He's just put me in, coach. Where do you need me to be useful? I want to fight for freedom. It's truly the most naive child you've ever heard of, except who's also very good with the sword and a gun.
Yeah.
So it's
helpful. Yeah.
I'm not going to go through all of the American Revolution battles that he was in because you don't care.
Please don't.
I don't care. So I'm not going to do that.
But he did well and he became a hero, right? People, America, loved him.
He was wounded in action at a battle, but saved his entire regiment before organizing retreat. He was great. People are big fan, glad this guy showed up. One of the interesting things that happened at this point was, I don't know, your non-American listeners probably are not familiar with the winter at Valley Forge, but every elementary school American student has to learn about it.
I'm also not familiar. I'm a non-American.
Yes. So it was 1777, 1778. So a few, almost a year after he had arrived. And it was winter, for an under-provisioned army with shitty uniforms and nowhere to stay. This is the dark night of the soul for the American army, basically.
Wait, where is Valley Forge? Where is it now? What state?
I want to say Pennsylvania.
Okay. So it's winter is very cold there.
Winter is 1.5 feet of snow and you don't have boots is the image they always give people. It's real bad.
Okay.
And Lafayette, who very well could have been I'm going to go somewhere else for this winter. I'm going to go to Virginia and stay at Mount Vernon and get warm and then come back later. But he stayed with his men all winter and paid for new uniforms for everybody in his regiment so they could be warm.
Like polar fleece uniforms with like
Exactly.
Gore-Tex. Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the moment in 5th grade when I was like, oh no, he's my boy. I love him. I swooned for that. So the winter thaws, people are getting ready for the spring battle season, and he fights for about another year until he says, actually, do you all mind if I go back to France for a few months? Because I really, really miss my wife. And I would like to say hi to her. And he does. He goes back to France in late 1778 just to hang out with Marie Adrienne for a while.
Right, but like, how does that go? He gets back to France, like his father-in-law is mad. He's like done treason by not going to Marseille. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is what you were saying earlier. Like, he has to be incredibly charming for this to work, because he is put under house arrest when he comes back for 8 days, and after that, King Louis XVI is like, actually, you're so charming, I'm not mad at you. Would you like to go hunting with me? And then he goes on a hunting trip with the king.
This is like, these sorts of stories are so interesting to me. Like when people, like, so I just did a few weeks ago, we were doing the Madame du Barry episode. And it's like people say like, oh, she was beautiful or whatever. But like the way that she was treated by people, like it's like, so you know what her magnetism was like. Like even if people, you know, sometimes they say like, oh, this person was so charismatic. And you look at a portrait and you're like, were you?
Yeah.
But like, and people write in letters and diaries like, oh, this person was so great. But in this story, like with Madame du Barry, like, you know how hot she was because of how the world reformed around her whenever she entered a room. But with Lafayette, like, you know how charming he was because of things like this. It's like, you could say, oh, he was charming. It's like the king invited him out hunting after he did treason.
Yeah.
Like, this is how charming this guy was. Yeah. It's very illustrative. Yeah.
Yes.
No. And you want to hang out with him. Like, it just sounds like he's just such a fun time.
Yes. I have in here that you had the Lafayette 1778 story that you wanted to share.
I do. Yes. So 1778, this is from the Peggy Shippen episode. So there was, in 1778, that was when, so Philadelphia had been, like, the Redcoats had taken over the city, basically. And then there was this party, the Mischienza, which was organized by Hot Spy and my boy, John Andre.
I also love John Andre, Hot Spy.
Hot, inept spy.
He's
John
the
Andre.
worst spy, but he's so handsome.
And he was also a party planner. And like, since the days of David Rizzio, like, I just love a party planner moment. Anyway, so he planned this party called the Mischienza. And then there was a whole thing about like, oh no, it was God, I forget. Honestly, like, listeners, I do an episode and then 2 hours later, I forget everything I did. But basically, there was this party and it became very controversial because I think there was not enough hot girls to go. So then Peggy Shippen and her sisters were invited. It was this big thing. It's like Peggy Shippen attended the Mischienza. And does that mean that she was a sympathizer for the Redcoats? It's like, no, it just meant that she was hot and liked to party.
She loved to party, that girl.
So while this party was going on, being held by the like British Redcoats side, Lafayette and friends were protesting it by being in the harbor. They poured kettles of whale oil onto the British barriers, ignited them, and then slipped away. So this is just the kind of nonsense he was up to.
He was leading real battles, and then he was just causing mischief and mayhem. And I love that.
Like, that's got a big, like, sort of like frat brothers energy to it. It's just like, it's like your rival schools having a party. So you just like go and like,
yes,
set the whale oil on fire on their ships.
And he's what, like 21 at this time? Perfect age for frat boys.
Exactly. It's a big frat boy energy. And now I'm picturing him and the bros, like the soldiers, like just these guys just being like, yeah, like hugging each other up, like, yeah, 1, 2, 3, Lafayette. Like, that's the energy. So anyway, I was like, I remembered I came across Lafayette. And I think that was a story where I was like, who's this guy when I encountered that? Yeah, just casual burning of things to protest a party that he was philosophically opposed to. Meanwhile, Peggy Shippen is just like, woo, tits out, just like having a time.
There's a scale, and Peggy Shippen's on one side and the Marquis de Lafayette's on the other side, and it's all justice and I don't give a fuck about justice. So. Yeah. And they were both there at the same place at the same time. And this is what I mean when I said in the introduction, like, I love how the people
from all these episodes are starting to intertwine with each other and like knowing who they are. Yeah.
Awesome.
And now for a quick advertising break.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This time of the year can certainly bring out the spooky and scary. And while you probably can't talk through the threat of zombies and ghosts, for other fears in your life, therapy is a great tool for finding ways to overcome them. Personally, I find it much scarier not to address the things I need to, because I know those are the things that are preventing me from living the life that I want. For example, a fear of vulnerability is a big thing that I've been discussing in therapy and with friends, and at the same time, I have always wanted to prioritize deep connections with my loved ones. Turns out, the way to deepen my relationships? It's confronting that fear of vulnerability. I'm learning it's important to show my authentic self in order to have authentic, deep connections. And that's not an easy thing to do, but luckily, we don't have to do this alone. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just need to fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you have the ability to switch therapists at any time, for any reason, for no additional charge. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/vulgar today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/vulgar.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going. If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
What is that smell? It's that slight crispness of fall, maybe a bit of apple cider or pumpkin spice, and I am definitely getting a hint of a deal. Oh wait, it's more than a hint. Yeah, these are the best deals, and not just this season, but all year long. In all seriousness, the smartest shoppers know that you get the brands you love with the most savings and cash back with Rakuten, and I know I'm certainly interested in sniffing out those deals. Start getting cash back at your favorite stores like Urban Outfitters, Petco, even Expedia if you're looking to get some travel in before the end of the year. And getting cash back doesn't mean you have to miss out on sales, because those can be stacked right on top. It's easy to use and based on a simple idea. Stores pay Rakuten for sending them shoppers, and Rakuten shares the money with you as cashback through PayPal or check. Smells like a perfect deal to me. Download the free Rakuten app and never miss a deal. Or go to Rakuten.com to start getting the most bang for your buck. That's RAKUTEN.
As a podcast network, our first priority has always been audio and the stories we're able to share with you. But at Realm, we also sell some pretty cool merch, and organizing that was made both possible and easy with Shopify. When you think about successful businesses like Aloe or Allbirds or Skims, an often overlooked secret is the business behind the business that makes selling and, for shoppers, buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. That's because nobody does selling better than Shopify. It's the home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And the not-so-secret secret that's definitely worth talking about is that Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%. That's more happy customers and way more sales going. If you're hoping to grow your business, your commerce platform better be ready to sell wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling, on the web, in your store, in their feed, and everywhere in between. businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout we use with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/realm, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/realm to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/realm.
And we're back. So he's back in France.
Yes. His wife has just had one baby, a daughter, Anastasie, and she will have another baby 9 months after he leaves to go back to America because they are the way that they are. So bless these two 40 young adults. But while he's in France and not having sex with his wife, who he loves a lot, he is trying to get the French king to sort of more formally support the American Revolution, which Louis XVI still doesn't want to do.
Well, Louis XVI, I haven't learned about him a lot yet, but I feel like I watched ages ago the Sofia Coppola movie, and it's Jason Schwartzman, and he's just kind of like, and I feel like that's just Louis XVI is just kind of like, just useless, just kind of like placeholder, not really anything. But I did want to clarify that Lafayette is like chilling at Versailles. He's like in high society, like doing all the stuff. Yeah. And if he's talking to the king, he's like
showing up at court, like at formal court events, being like, "Hi, it's me, the Marquis de Lafayette, the fanciest man who just committed treason. Don't worry about it."
Yeah. Okay. So he's like in the Versailles of it all. Yeah.
Yes. And while he's trying to petition the king for all the support, he teams up with the American ambassador to France, who is at this time Benjamin Franklin. Sorry, not Thomas Jefferson.
No, Benjamin, I want to make a clarifying statement on this podcast officially. So in one of the American episodes I had misunderstood something that either you or Lana had told me about Benjamin Franklin. And I think what it was one of you had said that he was the least racist or like the least slave owningest of the founding fathers.
Not the most least slave owningest, but among a select few of them who were like not in favor. Yeah.
And so I misinterpreted that as that he was the least awful of them, which is not true. No, he was, do you remember how you described him to me? You said
I described him as America's horny grandpa.
Yeah.
Which is correct.
Yeah. So I want to say like Benjamin Franklin is not the best founding father. I might have said that on the podcast. I would like to retract that statement. I recall that statement. There was like a TikTok. I feel like I forget who I've been messaging with about what, but it was either on the Discord or Lana had shared it. And it was like, if Benjamin, there's a whole thing about like, what would the founding fathers want us to do today? And someone did a TikTok that was like, okay, like, what do you think about this? And like the First Amendment. And Benjamin Franklin was like, can we go to Hooters again? Can we?
And that's correct.
He's, America's horny grandpa, which also there was that TV show recently-ish. There was like Michael Douglas played Benjamin Franklin. Good casting because Michael Douglas, I've always felt, is like a gross horny grandpa type person.
Yes. Although I didn't watch it, but I was texting with my parents who did watch it because of who they are as people. And they were furious because there was not one tiny bit of weird horny grandpa energy. It was like, oh, distinguished founding father, Ben Franklin.
Oh,
and they were like, where is the man who was just sitting naked in front of the window in his bedroom because he thought the cool night air on his privates was good for health?
I love your parents, and I understand your personality better now.
Yeah.
And also, you cast Michael Douglas. He's got a grimy, sleazy quality, like no shade to Michael Douglas, but like it's like Willem Dafoe. You don't cast him to be like some sort of like noble person.
No.
It's just like that's not the affect
choices were made.
What I do know about that Benjamin Franklin show, which again I did not and will never watch, is that it was one of the first appearances in film of the Chevalier d'Eon,
which we love to see.
Which I'm always happy. I'm happy to see, and it sounds like it was an okay portrayal of a trans person.
We'll take it. We'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay. So Ben Franklin.
Is he on your money?
He's on the $100 bill. Yeah.
Not cool. Not cool.
He's better than Andrew Jackson. It could be worse.
I don't know anything about that one.
He killed probably hundreds of thousands of Native Americans in a really intentional genocide, and he's on the 20. So
is he? This is where it's good. Like, do people in America lately mostly just like use your phone or just like tap your card and like not use cash?
I haven't seen a $20 bill in ages, which is good.
You know, it's the same here because you know who's on our money is King Charles III.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
A man who was recorded on tape saying he wanted to be Camilla Parker Bowles' tampon.
I recall that from season whatever of The Crown, and I almost cringed out of my body.
He is on our money, so
congrats.
Okay, so Benjamin Franklin is
the ambassador to France.
Yes.
And he's working with Lafayette to like get support for the American Revolution.
Wait, Benjamin Franklin, I picture being 65 years old. I don't know.
Yes,
I feel like
correct.
he's like the oldest founding father type guy. Yeah. Lafayette is at this point, I'm going to say 22. I don't know.
Yeah, roughly.
So he's just like, hey, let's work together. And
he's like, yeah, absolutely. I'm afterwards we're going to go to Hooters, right? And Lafayette's like, no, I love my wife. Don't worry about it. So the king does not make like a formal declaration of war because he's meh. But he does agree that Lafayette can take a fleet of ships and 6,000 French soldiers back to America, which is somehow not the same thing as declaring war. I don't know what the difference is, but this listeners might be familiar with this as the song Guns and Ships from the Broadway musical Hamilton.
Yeah, we're getting into some real Hamilton stuff. And please mention all the Hamilton connections as they come up because you know the show better than I do.
Yes.
When I first heard the music of Hamilton, like when I first became aware of it, I was in a Tumblr era and it was all that anyone on Tumblr was talking about. And I'm like, what is this show? And I'm like, oh, these songs are catchy. These are good. Don't know what this plot line is. Don't know who any of these people are. And at the time I remember I was listening to it when I was like on a flight like back to Nova Scotia for Christmas. And I just listened to the soundtrack. I'm like, yeah, this is so good. Sorry, cast recording. And I was trying to tell my friends, I'm like, no, you should listen to it. And I was trying to describe, I'm like, it's kind of like Jesus Christ Superstar, where there's like a guy and he's jealous of another guy, and then he kind of causes his death. And that was what I took from it. But there's all this American history stuff that I don't understand that actually is the story of it. I had never heard of Alexander Hamilton or anyone in that musical except for maybe George W. and Thomas J.
Yes.
Lafayette. I was just like, how... Debbie
Why
Diggs.
is he here?
Like, he's great. Who's this French person rapping?
And like I have opinions about the portrayal of the Marquis de Lafayette in Hamilton, which is that Guns and Ships is the most accurate Lafayette moment in that entire show because it's where he has the most swag. And he's just like, everybody look at me and how incredible I am. Let me do the most impressive rap in all of musical theater. The rest of it, he's just like, yes, I am a noble Frenchman who doesn't speak great English. And I'm like, where's the dirtbag energy from this man? Where is he out in the harbor lighting shit on fire? Like, I want more from him is what I'm saying.
Lafayette, I mean, this comes up for me personally a lot when I'm doing a lot of these stories. But this one, I'm going to say especially given the American Revolution of it all. How is there not a movie of this? This
right?
is...
Where's my Lafayette biopic? I'm furious that we don't have one.
How is there Michael Douglas is Benjamin Franklin in writing some treaties in France, the TV show or whatever? Like, how is that the TV show they did and not Lafayette? Like, this is a great story. And he's on the side of the American Revolution. So people would want to finance this.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
He's a white, straight man.
Yeah. And Timothy Chalamet is a working actor who speaks French and English. What are we doing, people?
Timothy Chalamet, yes. Now I'm picturing him, and that's perfect because he looks so young and gawky, but
but he'd be such a good war hero.
He'd be great. Yeah. No, this is honestly baffling to me because there's such a struggle to get biopics made of like women, let alone like women of color, people of color, like queer people. But this is like a straight white man.
This is a straight white, rich founding father who I'm like, it's right there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Huh. That's bizarre. Okay. But yeah, because this is getting very dramatic. So he's back there. He's got his troops. He's in America again. So American Revolution again is still going on.
Still going on. Yes. It's 1780 at this point. I continue to be
needing to be reminded that the American Revolution did not happen just in 1776, that it was a lengthy
it went on for a while.
thing.
Yeah.
They didn't just declare independence and that was kind of it. It was like, it went on.
It went on, and it went on badly. Like, because I was saying, they're very untrained and very unfinanced, and things are like, so when he shows up back in America, things are not going great. I do want a sidebar. Shortly after he left, but before he arrived in like December 1779, Marie Adrienne gives birth to their second surviving child, who they name George Washington Lafayette. Listeners can't see the face that Anna's making.
George Washington.
I don't know how
Marie,
they would.
Claire, Jules, Louis, Pierre. Yeah.
I think he only gave them the two names, but this like really underlines the weird father-son thing that they had going on, and that's kind of cute. I don't know.
That's true. I want to share a story which is similar to this, which is that a friend of mine does work with Doctors Without Borders, like MSF. She goes to various places, and she was in around the time that Obama was first elected. She was, and I want to say Ethiopia or South Sudan. Anyway, it was an African country on the African continent, and she was helping people out there. And the women there were calling their daughters, and maybe even sons, like Michelle Obama, the First Lady of the United States.
Oh my God, I love that so much.
You know, Epstein.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
That was their name because they were so excited about Michelle Obama.
I love that. That's exactly the energy, except if they were also all best friends with Michelle Obama.
Yeah.
I just love this person so much, and I have adopted them as mine.
Mm-hmm. So George Washington Lafayette.
Yes.
Great. Great. Let me see. I don't know when exactly this happened, but I do want to mention it was at around this time that Benedict Arnold did his treason. And this was also in my notes when I looked up Lafayette, which is like Benedict Arnold was in his like secret house out of the way to do his treason house. And he knew that people were going to, because John Andre, bad spy, hid the map in his boot, dressed the wrong way.
He's such a dummy. Oh my God.
John Andre.
It's a good thing he's pretty.
Yeah. So all this happened, and then Peggy Shippen was left in the like forest woods house. And she's like, oh, fuck, like my husband just did a treason. And then Lafayette, I want to say Hamilton, came to the door, and they're like, hey, is Benedict Arnold here? And she's like, oh, and she like pretended to be having this like hysterical nervous breakdown to like distract them so that Benedict Arnold could get away. Anyway, Lafayette was there at that dinner party where Peggy Shippen just like was like, oh no, I'm having a mental breakdown, and also I'm throwing all these letters in the fireplace for no reason.
And as somebody who actually had schemes, I just imagine him watching her like, lady, what are you doing?
Yeah, so Lafayette was there for that as well. I just wanted to connect that to that episode. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be, 1780. He gets back like early 1780 with all of his guns and all of his ships. And they fight for another whole year with battles that we're not going to talk about because blah, 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 whatever. But by 1781, which is the year the American Revolution ends, spoiler, it is time for the Battle of Yorktown, a.k.a. the Act 1 finale of the Broadway musical Hamilton. It actually might not be the Act 1 finale, but it should be. That's my hot take. So Lafayette and Washington do some sort of military maneuver where they like come at Yorktown from two different directions, and they like catch the British in between them, blah, 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 tactics, etc. Lafayette is leading half the army, basically, is the point. And the general of the British army surrenders at Yorktown, and now Lafayette, aged 26, has just won the American Revolution. Hooray! Good for him.
And he's just getting started.
We are on page 4 of 9 of my notes. So for anybody else, this would be plenty for one lifetime.
Well, no, and for anybody else, by the time this happened, he would be 56 years old.
Right. He's 26.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, well, I guess time to retire. Like, I've had an active military career from age 11.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. Usually in a story like this, either the person is 56 years old or they're going to die in 5 years of some old-timey illness. And somehow Lafayette just keeps going, and history keeps happening to him.
Yeah. What's the history has its eyes on him?
It does. And he's like, history, could you please look at somebody else for a minute? I am very tired. So there's lots of like treaty making and the Constitutional Convention and whatever that's going on in America. Because like now they're a country and they have to figure out how to be a country, blah, blah, blah.
I want to say just in terms of the blah, 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 the Liberty Bell exists, like just all this stuff that is kind of like, okay, I imagine this is what textbooks are like in America.
Can I just brief sidebar on the Liberty Bell, which is just such it like exemplifies Americanness so much to me, which is that we built this bell and we're like, we're gonna ring it on the first day of Constitution because we're so free and so great. And we ring it once and it snaps in half because we did a shitty job. And then we said, this is the symbol of our nation. And we put it in a museum and we've never rung it again because it would actually break if we tried. And I just
That's what it is?
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Oh, this country is silly.
Yeah, and that was in the Ona Judge episode. That was where it's like, we need to have the greatest museum of all time to display this bell.
Shitty bell that we made badly.
And then the like people of Philadelphia, the like advocates were like, well, actually, the place you're going to hang this bell is actually the place where like George Washington's enslaved people lived. So could you like make the museum about them? And it's like, no, bell.
this terrible cracked bell you can't use.
This matters more.
America. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we've got.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so fortunately, Lafayette didn't care about that either. He's not hanging around for the Constitutional Convention of it all.
He's like, my work here is done. Like, there's no more battles to fight.
My work here is done. My hot wife is at home. I need to go. And so, like, late 1781, he heads home, immediately gets his wife pregnant, and they have their third baby, who they name Marie Antoinette.
No.
Yeah, they do.
Wow. They're really, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's born in 1782. And
wait.
Yeah.
But didn't Marie Antoinette hate him?
Yes, but we'll get to that. I will also say, if the queen hates you, a really nice way to say, we don't hate you, please don't arrest us for treason, is to name your baby after her.
Okay.
Some of it was insurance.
Okay, it's not so much like a tribute to a woman who they admire and more just like, let's try to not be arrested. Okay.
No, but I will say like things get complicated a little bit in the France portion of this story with like what Lafayette's political position is. Because in America, he's the most leftist lefty you've ever seen. He sailed across the country to fight a king and start a democratic republic. So you would assume that he would carry that energy back to France. But he doesn't really. He has a much different relationship with his own king and his own
he's like
monarchy.
Going hunting, just like hanging out at Versailles. Yeah.
He's one of the nobility and like we'll get into it as we talk about it. But like this is always the part that surprised me when I started learning about this part, because obviously American public schools don't teach you about the French Revolution. So all I knew was American war hero Lafayette. When I started reading this, I was like, well, this seems different from him. But when you think about it, like you were saying, he is like friends with the king and these are the people he grew up with and this is the world he knows. It's different.
Yeah, it's easier to fight against tyranny and a monarch in a country that's not your own, maybe. Yeah. You can be more objective about it.
I think so. Yeah, and he was also 18 years old at that time. So you have to think maybe he didn't have so much nuance to think about. Now that he's like in his late 20s, early 30s.
He's got a frontal lobe, etc.
He's like, maybe I should think this through.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets a hero's welcome in France, which is hilarious because technically he wasn't even supposed to go, but he did just like overthrow the British king. And since France hates Britain so much, they're like, actually, this is fine. Nice job. Love this for you. And there's like 5 years where Lafayette gets to take a fucking break.
Good. Good. Just like, I don't know what he did, but I imagine like taking up watercolor painting or like pottery or just like hanging out with all of his little children. Like, yeah.
Do you want to know what he did do? Because like,
what did he do?
He hung out with his 3 kids and he got really involved in the French abolition movement against slavery.
Oh,
yeah.
Because he needs a cause. He's a person who needs a cause.
And he picked a fucking good one. And God bless him. And also, he used this time and his close relationship with George Washington to try to talk to Americans to be like, can you stop having slaves, you dumb bitches? Look at the Constitution you just wrote. He once said, I think later as he had more time to think about it, but the quote attributed to him is, "I would never have drawn my sword in the cause of America if I could have conceived that I was founding a land of slavery." Yeah.
He's on the right side.
Yeah. And you imagine Martha Washington off screen just going like, this fucking adopted son I never liked. He went back and forth to America a few times in these like 5 years of chill. And every time he was like, "Hey, George Washington, free your slaves, bro. Please free your slaves."
And George
he never
Washington
did,
is
but
like,
he tried.
"What if I obsessively chase one of them?"
Yeah. Yeah. So that was his break. That was his abolition break. And
okay, so he just sort of moved into sort of like social justice work. Okay.
yes. But then late 1786, 1787 came around. And this is what I call part 2 of this 3-part story, the French Revolution part. So,
okay, this is really important because you need to explain the French Revolution to me, please.
I am going to do my very best in an abridged version for the parts that matter for this story. But if you have other questions for other parts, I have tons of notes I do not need. So,
okay,
we'll
can I ask one question? I don't know if it's this part or not, but there's a group of people in the French Revolution called the sans culottes, which I think means no pants. What did they wear?
It means no breeches, like no tight pantaloons that you see in like period dramas. What they wore was like wide-legged, comfy pants.
Oh, okay. So it's saying like no
noble
shorts.
pants. Yeah.
No,
it's like, I don't wear the fancy breeches of the rich people. I wear the wide-legged trousers of the proletariat.
No skinny jeans.
Yes.
Wide leg pants.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because at first I saw the sans culottes and I'm like, what are these guys wearing? Are we going out in our underoos? What's happening? We're the sans culottes and we're in our underpants. No. Okay.
No pants, no kings. We're good to go.
But they were actually like more pants.
They were maximum pants. What I will tell you is that every revolutionary in the French Revolution had a fucking costume going on. There was a uniform and it was wide-legged pants and a big old red, white, and blue rosette and then a little red stocking cap like a garden gnome. It's just like, I don't know why you needed that, but they are the French and they're never going to stop being the French.
There's always going to be an outfit. Okay. No, that's great. So it's like palazzo pants.
Exactly.
Yeah. No capris, palazzos.
Palazzos only. No palaces, only palazzos. I'm sorry. That was terrible.
No, that's good. That's great. Okay. So the French Revolution begins. What happens?
Yes. Well, we're leading up to it. This is the like what drove them toward French Revolution starts.
So what you're telling me is that the French Revolution, like the American Revolution, was not a single event that happened on one day.
Alas, no. That would be much easier to talk about.
It is also a multi-year situation. Okay.
Yes. And like all conflicts, unfortunately, it starts with the economy. And I'm not going to get into the French economy because I don't care and you don't care. The listeners don't care. But for context, it is a recession. Things are not going great. People are starving. The weather
is weird. The weather is weird, and that affected grain.
Yes.
Like the farms, like, because we've talked a bit on the podcast about there's been this like weird, it's not the little ice age, but it's just like weather's been shitty for like quite a while. And that when weather's shitty one year, then the farming is bad the next year, and then that affects the farming the next year. And it's just kind of like there's not a lot of food. Yeah.
Right. And we're also coming off like the 7 Years' War was not that long ago. I think there were other wars in between there. So like the spending has not been very practical. And also there's this decadent nobility that's spending all of their money on like Versailles things. So basically economy's bad. People are starving. Things are terrible. And the King Louis XVI calls the Assembly of Notables in early 1787, which is basically like a gathering of all the rich and important people in France to figure out why the economy is busted. And Lafayette is invited to this meeting, which I can only assume is because King Louis XVI forgot everything he ever knew about Lafayette as a person because Lafayette is immediately like, you know what might fix this problem? A representative democracy. I think that might help. This did not go over, but there were lots of debates. I'm going to give you like the highest high level version of this because I don't know. But basically the way that like the French government was managed, there was the king, obviously, who was in charge of everything. But underneath that, this assembly of notables was basically like 3 branches of people all sent representatives. And it was like kind of like a half-assed parliament that didn't really have a lot of power, but had more broad representation. And the 3 groups were the clergy, the nobility, and everybody who's not the clergy or the nobility. And they all get 1 vote each, and majority rules. So basically the clergy and the nobility voted together on everything, and the common people were just like also there. So this was not great for democracy.
I want to say I've seen recently. So first of all, there was something astrologically, I forget what it is exactly, was happening in that time period and is happening now in our time period as well. Something. And then also I've seen bar graphs. It's great. Listeners, share memes and things with me often, and I appreciate. And they've started sharing memes with me about how the French Revolution era is similar to this era. Yeah. And one of the things was showing the difference between the rich and poor on a bar graph is like very similar now to what it was in France at that time. Just the difference between the like 1% and the everybody else. So, and the economy is bad, and it's just like, okay, familiar.
Yeah. I have this tripartite assembly in my notes as it's the Electoral College. So basically, we're doing all of this again. Yeah. But wildly, at this point, 1787, instead of teaming up with the rich people the way they always did, the clergy said, actually, we're going to side with the common people. We're going to form our own assembly. It's going to be the National Assembly. That's more of a populace-based thing. And we're going to try to actually fix things for the common people because this economic crisis is so bad.
This is surprising to me because the clergy in France, I'm imagining Jonathan Pryce in The Affair of the Necklace, the movie.
With all the billowing,
with the billowing cloaks and the just sort of like, bribery and the like, like they were very much literally in bed with the nobility and just like, rich people could pay to not have sins anymore and stuff. So, this is cool of the clergy. Surprising to me.
For them. It is surprising. The nobility does not love this now because they're the one with the one disenfranchised vote.
Are they the ones who everyone else is like tax billionaires?
And they're like, no, we're the billionaires. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so Lafayette, my boy, goes over to the National Assembly with the clergy and the common people. And he's like, this is awesome. We're going to start our own thing. This goes on for a while because politics takes fucking forever. So this kind of percolates along until 1789, when Lafayette comes back to the National Assembly and presents the first draft of the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which he wrote in partnership with
Thomas Jefferson.
J.
So I wanted to slide in here and say this is the part where Thomas J was in Paris. Sally Hemings was there. James Hemings inventing macaroni and cheese. This is so Lafayette was hanging out with Thomas Jefferson a lot, like coming over to his house and like they were like writing stuff. And Thomas Jefferson is like, yeah, I'm totally cool with abolition of slavery.
Declaration of the Rights of Man, except for these people that I brought with me to make my mac and cheese.
Who are totally not enslaved by me.
Going to have my children, don't worry.
Yeah, it's like totally illegal to have slaves in France. So these are just my friends, the Hemings siblings. Anyway, so that was when this was happening. So Sally Hemings is in France at this very chaotic time, but also she was in the household while Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson are like writing this paperwork and stuff.
And I think they got out of town shortly after this, right? Didn't Thomas Jefferson look around and be like, something bad's going to happen? Should we skedaddle?
I think there was a really cold winter and there was all this stuff happening and they were like, let's go back to Virginia now.
Yeah. Okay, they might make it another 6 months then because it is July 1789, which is the formal start of the French Revolution, which is when they present the Declaration of the Rights of Man at the National Assembly. Everyone's all fired up, ready to go. And then this little bisexual asshole named Camille Desmoulins, who is my other favorite French Revolution person, says...
Is this a man or a woman?
This is a man.
Named Camille?
Yeah.
Camille. Okay.
The French love a gender-neutral name. Remember, Lafayette's first name is Marie.
Marie. Okay.
So Desmoulins is like, this is all going according to plan. However, I would like to make it more violent and faster, because if we present this to the king, we're not going to get fucking anywhere. So he gets a little citizen army together and they storm the Bastille prison and try to break out all of the political prisoners, sort of as a statement that now we run Paris and fuck the king. And then things kind of go immediately to shit thereafter. This is the 14 Juillet, Bastille Day, like France's Independence Day was this asshole being like, I want this to happen faster and with more blood, please.
Oh yeah, Bastille Day. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So Lafayette is not a big fan of this approach, surprisingly. He was all for the write the declaration and get the king to sign off and kind of go through the appropriate channels of power, and then we'll be like eventually a constitutional monarchy. Like that was his end goal. And then this started to kind of go crazy, but he was still in like the National Assembly. He was still in it, and he wanted to sort of steer the ship as carefully as he could to get a liberal outcome without killing that many people. So he was named commander-in-chief of the National Guard of Paris. What is
the National Guard?
Sort of like the citizen police. It was like the city cops, basically.
Okay.
And his job was stop people from revolutioning in the streets and like keep things nonviolent and okay, which is a terrible fucking job to give a person, because no one could have done this job. The revolution was going to happen, no matter.
The momentum is there. It's happening. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So like throughout all of this, the National Assembly got everybody to sign off on the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which would have been like the new constitution. And they sent it to the king, and the king was like, fuck this. No, I'm not doing this. I am the king. I have a monarchy for a reason. So things just sort of keep getting tenser and worse until later in... No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've seen just people posting things on Instagram and stuff, but one of the phrases that I've seen come up a lot is something along the lines of like, society doesn't progress. Like people don't get cultural change, like social justice doesn't happen by asking politely. Like in all of human history, it's always taken a revolution to actually make any change happen. So this is... Lafayette is like, but if we do the paperwork and ask politely, maybe we'll get... It's like, no, you never would. The king never would. But this is what it took in this instance, but it's like pretty extreme. And we're going to leave it there. It's a cliffhanger, yes. Like, when Allison is here, it's not going to be a one-part episode, generally. Next week, we're going to be back to learn more about what Lafayette did next. And honestly, the way that this story like combines what we talked about in the first part of the series with what's happening in America, the American Revolution, with the French Revolution, like it just fills in all these gaps. It fills in all these holes. I like the way that this season is kind of starting to really weave itself together as a tapestry of just sort of the people we've talked about are starting to recur. Like, and I'm talking about this for me. It's just like, because this is a time of period that I've truly never studied before. And so just when the people start to overlap with each other, I'm like, oh, that's that person. Oh, that's and then it's all kind of building together in the way that I hoped it would. And I'm glad it's actually happening as we wind our way towards the ultimate goal of telling the story of Marie Antoinette. So next week we'll be back with Lafayette Part 2. And also, I have to mention that Allison has a new book that's coming out February 25th, so just a few months from now. It's her third book. It is called Fagin the Thief, and it is a retelling of Oliver Twist. But, well, it's like taking the character of Fagin the Thief, who is, I best know from the musical Oliver. He has a lot of show-stopping songs. He's a Jewish character living in Victorian London, and what Allison has done beautifully in this book, as all the blurbs on the book say, and all the pre-release reviews are all saying, I haven't read it yet, but I know it's amazing because Allison books are always amazing. is to just kind of refocus and kind of show what was life like for Fagin the thief. Anyway, this book comes out in February. You can pre-order it now. Pre-orders are so helpful for authors like Allison because it helps bookstores know that there's enthusiasm for these books. So the bookstores know to buy lots of copies. And then when bookstores have lots of copies, then other people will come in and see them and buy them. Here's a quote from one of the blurbs on Allison's book. Fagin the thief does for Fagin what Wicked did for the Wicked Witch of the West. Allison Epstein is absolutely at the top of her game. That's a quote from the author Julia Fine. Anyway, you can learn more about Allison and about this book, and also links to pre-order Allison's book, Fagin the Thief, at AllisonEpstein.com. And Allison also has, of course, a Substack newsletter, Dirtbags Through the Ages. Lafayette is there, but that's kind of like a Dirtbag Brackets complimentary. There's also just some really shitty people there. Allison talks about it so funny. The puns, the amazing puns that she comes up with are just chef's kiss. It's a real passion project for her. Anyway, so Dirtbags Through the Ages is Allison's Substack, and you can also find them on social media at Rapscallison. And you can also find me and the show on social media. We are on Instagram and Threads at Vulgar History Pod. I also have a Substack newsletter. It's called Vulgar History a la carte. And what I've been doing recently is sharing stories of a lot of them are women who we've talked about on the podcast, and some of them aren't. And I recently just posted about Mary Shelley because our goth queen mom friend icon, like, it's Halloween season, and that is when everybody likes to think about Mary Shelley. I personally think you should think about her year round, and also Claire Claremont you should think about even more often. But anyway, I just posted there about that. So if you want to subscribe to my Substack, it's totally free. It's vulgarhistory.substack.com. And also, I want to mention I have my Patreon. So that is where I've been posting more and more content. And I do want to emphasize that you can join the Patreon for free and just see a lot of the messages and stuff I post there. I have like updates about when there's like merch sales and new merch designs, not just merch related stuff. Specifically, what I've just started posting there is, as you know, or maybe you don't, maybe this is the first time you've ever listened to this podcast and you don't know who I am. I'm writing a book about Caroline of Brunswick. I've been writing it all year, and it's kind of at this point the only thing I'm able to talk about or think about. And I want to yell about it to people who know what I'm talking about, which is all of you, because people who listen to this podcast tend to start from the beginning, which is the Caroline of Brunswick episode. Anyway, so I've been writing this book. I'm learning so many new and interesting things about Caroline of Brunswick. Like, I ride even harder for her now with all the things I've learned about her. And so I've started posting little updates about that on my Patreon in a new podcast. It's not like, Anne, why are you doing more work for yourself? I'm not. I would be yelling about this to Hepburn if I wasn't recording it for you. So anyway, so everyone who joins the Patreon can listen to this new podcast, including free members of the Patreon. It's called Anne is Writing a Book. And it's just like little short updates from me, little audio podcast updates about me. The first one that I posted was about how I'm losing my mind at how many dukes there are in the story. I think it's something like 17,000. It might be something more like 12. They all have the same name. And then when one of them dies, then someone else becomes that next duke. Anyway, I had to make myself a whole document of who are these goddamn dukes. They're all Prinny's brothers and uncles and cousins. And I am losing my mind. And so I had to yell about it to somebody. And so I started a podcast. Anyway, so if you go to patreon.com/AnneFosterWriter, and the link is in the show notes of this, wherever you're listening to this, you can join there to become a Patreon member. And this special podcast of me talking about my book writing journée is available to all Patreon members. And you don't have to listen to it on Patreon. You can like link it to your Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever. So it just like pops up like a little treat for you. Yeah, so that's happening there. And then also if you join the Patreon for $1 a month, then you get early ad-free access to all regular episodes of Vulgar History, including ad-free episodes of all the old episodes of Vulgar History. And if you pledge $5 or more on the Patreon, then you get also the bonus episodes, which are the bonus other series I do, like the after show, where sometimes I extend the conversations I'm having with guests into an after show situation. There's also So This Asshole, where I talk about gross men from history. I have had some requests for some shitty men, and I'm like, these do sound like shitty men I should scream about that'll drive me insane. And when I finish writing my book, perhaps I will do that. And then there's also Vulgar Peace Theater, which is where myself, today's guest, Allison Epstein, and our other friend, Lana Wood Johnson, talk about historical drama movies. And so when the $5 a month Patreon membership gets you access to those podcasts as well. And then also the $5 or more Patreons get to join the Discord, which is where we chat, which is another place where I have been sharing information about my book writing journey. But also we post pictures of our pets and talk about how they're all such good little guys. And anyway, it's a nice time if you just want to like hang out, chit chat with other Tits Out Brigade members. We also are really into Survivor, the TV show. Anyway, there's other things to tell you. What are those things? I told you about Allison, I showed you Allison's book. Oh, and then also, so we have our brand partner, Common Era Jewelry, which is a small women-owned company that makes beautiful heirloom jewelry inspired by women from history. And I usually talk about how like they have various collections, like they have like literal like representations of the faces of like some of the women who we've talked about on the show, who we love and admire, like Cleopatra, Hatshepsut, Anne Boleyn, Agrippina. And then just in terms of like parenthood, motherhood, and women in history and how it could be so deadly and so fraught to be giving birth. So there's a new design that Tori's just added to the store. It's the Ancient Fertility and Childbirth Amulet. So it's her interpretation of the ancient uterine amulet, a powerful symbol of protection and fertility rooted in the traditions of the Greco-Roman world. So as she writes, in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, childbirth was fraught with danger. Every pregnancy was a step into the unknown, a risk that people carried with them, making the desire for control over their reproductive health even more urgent. These amulets offered women a sense of agency and empowerment in the face of such grave risks, helping them reclaim some control over their own fates. And so it's this beautiful new design. Anyway, so that speaks to you and your personal journée. Go to commonera.com/vulgar or use vulgar at checkout to get 15% off of this or any of the other beautiful pieces available from that beautiful jewelry company. And if you want to get some beautiful vulgar history merchandise, like are very popular, I have to say, I knew it would be popular. I bought one for myself. It's our varsity crew neck sweatshirts that say vulgar history, not taking history seriously since 2019. It looks like a varsity, like a university type sweatshirt. It's gorgeous, designed by a friend of the podcast, Karen Moynihan. And it's also shading a person who left a very silly review for my show saying that this show is not for people who take history seriously. And it's not. So ta-da, jazz hands. Anyway, you can get that and our other beautiful vulgar history merchandise, including actually designed by Karen as well. We have the Tits Out for the holidays holiday jumper. If you're somebody who's getting on that sort of thing already, the merchandise is available at vulgarhistory.com/store. for people in the US. If you're outside the US, the shipping is so much better if you go to vulgarhistory.redbubble.com. And a couple times this month, there are sales going on potentially when you're listening to this. So just like go to the website, and if there's not like a something % off sale, just like wait a week and there probably will be. Anyway, you can get in touch with me using the form at vulgarhistory.com, which sends little emails to me if you have thoughts or feedback or whatever about this season. Are there people who you want to make sure that I know about who are involved in this whole Marie Antoinette situation? Like send me those suggestions as well. Do you live somewhere, or have you traveled somewhere where you've seen a plaque or a statue or a reference to any of these people? Very exciting. I love to get pictures from people. I don't travel a lot, and so I like people who do travel to send me pictures of their travels. Anyway, next week we'll be back with Lafayette Part 2. And until then, keep your pants on and your tits out. Vulgar History is researched, written, and hosted by Anne Foster. That's me. The editor is Christina Lumagi. Theme music is by the Severn Duo. The Vulgar History Show image is by Deborah Wong. Transcripts are written by Aveline Malik. Find transcripts of recent episodes at vulgarhistory.com.
Listening to a podcast should be time well spent. And I promise it will be if you'll give this podcast a try. It's called Something You Should Know. I'm the host, Mike Carruthers, and in every episode, I talk with leading experts on topics I know you will find fascinating. From why people can't keep secrets, what your favorite music says about you, why your pet acts in strange ways, and so much more. Something You Should Know is designed to give you information you can use in your life and give you great intel that you can share with others. I'm told it's a binge-worthy podcast. And with over 1,000 episodes, there's a lot to binge on. Something You Should Know has been ranked in the top of the Apple Podcast charts consistently for a long time. I know you're going to like this. I just need to get you to try it. Something You Should Know. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts.
Contained herein are the heresies of Radolf Buntwine, erstwhile monk turned traveling medical investigator. Join me as I study the secrets of the divine plagues and uncover the blasphemous truth that ours is not a loving God, and we are not its favored children. The heresies of Radolf Buntwine, wherever podcasts are available.
What's up, everyone? It's Noah Daniels.
Hey, y'all. I'm JJ.
Hey, guys. It's Kat.
And we're your hosts of the Real Hauntings podcast, where we bring on guests who share their first-hand encounter ghost stories and supernatural experiences. Now on to the trailer.
I've been warned to not tell this story, but I think because of the way it ends, it's okay to tell this story, because some people say that with certain entities, to like speak of them or talk about them or in any way like portray them as powerful will attract them to other people. The creepiest thing about it to me is a lot of times it would wait for me to notice it. Like, it would just lay its arm out like this, and then I'd be like, where is it? Where is it? And then I'd see it, and then it would just slither back.
For more information on the Real Hauntings, Real Ghost Stories podcast, make sure you check out Real.fm to learn more about our podcast and many other amazing podcasts.